Why does the human soul crave destruction? It's a question most people never dare to ask out loud, but it lingers underneath almost everything we do. It hides in our worst decisions, in the relationships we ruin, in the addictions we feed, and in that strange fascination we feel when we watch something fall apart. We say we want peace, stability, and happiness. Yet over and over again, we walk toward the fire. We touch what burns us. We break what we swore to protect. Why? Maybe that's why you clicked on this video. Somewhere inside, you recognize the title not as an abstract question, but as a mirror. Why the human soul craves destruction is not just a topic. It's a confession the whole species has been whispering for centuries. Deep down, you know this darkness is not outside of you. It lives in you. Quiet, patient, waiting. We pretend we are creatures of order. We build careers, routines, identities, and neatly organized lives that look stable from the outside. But beneath all of that structure, there is something restless, something that doesn't care about your 5-year plan, your reputation, or the image you're trying to maintain. That part of you doesn't want safety, it wants truth. And truth, when it comes, rarely arrives gently. It tends to break things. That is why the human soul is drawn to destruction. Not because it loves chaos, but because it is starving for what is real. In a world made of filters, masks, and performances, destruction feels like the only honest force left. You can fake success. You can fake happiness. You can fake being okay, but you cannot fake collapse. When something breaks, it tells the truth. Look at your own life for a moment. How many times have you watched yourself sabotage something good without really understanding why? You say the wrong thing on purpose. You push away the person who loves you. You procrastinate until the opportunity dies. On the surface, it looks like irrational self-destruction, but underneath, something else is happening. Your soul is rebelling against the life that doesn't fit what you really are. We think destruction means failure. We think it's proof that we are broken, weak, or hopeless. But what if destruction is a language? What if it's the way your deeper self tries to communicate that something is false, outdated, or too small for who you are becoming? Psychology calls it self-sabotage. Spirituality calls it ego death. Philosophy calls it the collapse of meaning structures. Different names for the same experience. The moment when the life you built no longer matches the person you are inside, and the distance between the two becomes unbearable. So, the soul starts to tear things down. This is why so many people fall apart right when they should be happy. The job is finally stable, the relationship looks perfect, the social media feed looks impressive. On the outside, life is a success story. On the inside, it feels dead. And when your inner world is buried under a life that doesn't feel true, destruction starts to look like freedom. We are not only afraid of pain, We are afraid of numbness. We can endure suffering as long as we feel alive inside it. What we cannot endure is the slow suffocation of an existence that means nothing to us. When life becomes a quiet, polished cage, the soul looks for any crack it can widen. It will use crisis, conflict, loss, or collapse if it has to. Not because it hates you, but because it refuses to let you disappear into a life that is only technically fine. That is the secret nobody tells you. A part of you would rather see everything burn than continue sleepwalking. We see this impulse reflected in the world around us. Civilizations rise and then, at their peak, rot from the inside. Empires fall not only because of external enemies, but because they become hollow. They worship their own image. They cling to comfort. They forget why they existed in the first place. And when meaning dies, destruction walks in like gravity.
The same thing happens inside a human being. We build an identity, the good person, the strong one, the successful one, the one who never fails, the one who never needs help. At first, that identity protects us. It gives us a role to play, a mask to survive behind. But eventually, the mask becomes a prison. You can't breathe behind it anymore. You can't cry behind it. You can't be honest. And so, piece by piece, the soul begins to crack it open. That cracking feels violent. It looks like breakdowns, bad decisions, dark nights where you don't recognize yourself. But in that darkness, something important is happening. The false self is dying. The soul is pushing you toward a more honest version of yourself. And destruction is the messy, necessary process of everything fake falling apart. This is why we are secretly drawn to apocalyptic stories, ruined cities, endings, and collapse. We don't just fear destruction, we long for the clarity it brings. In ruins, nothing can pretend anymore. You see what was real and what was never real to begin with. In that brutal honesty, there is a strange peace. But there is another layer, deeper and more uncomfortable. Some of us don't only watch destruction, we chase it. We look for chaos when life becomes too calm. We start fights when things feel too loving. We push ourselves into extremes just to feel the edges of existence again. It looks irrational, but it isn't. It is the soul trying to break the glass between you and your own death. Because only when you remember you will die do you start to ask what is actually worth living for. Destruction, in this sense, is a wake-up call. Every time life falls apart, a question appears in the ashes. Who are you now that this is gone? You were the relationship. You were the job. You were the role. You were the mask. Now it's gone. Who remains? That question is the real reason the soul allows destruction. Without it, you would never look past the surface of yourself. There is something else the soul remembers. Nothing in this world is permanent. Not your body, not your thoughts, not your identity, not the people you love. We suffer the most when we try to hold what was never meant to be held forever. The more tightly we cling, the more violent the destruction feels when life takes it away. But imagine for a moment that destruction is not an enemy,
but a teacher. That every collapse in your life was trying to show you what you were building your sense of self on. That every time something broke, it was revealing where you had placed your faith, in what can die instead of in what cannot die. Beneath everything you've lost, there is one thing that has never been destroyed: the awareness watching, the consciousness that noticed every ending and survived all of them. That quiet presence is who you really are. The human soul craves destruction because on some level it is trying to lead you back to that place, the part of you that doesn't shatter when the story does. When you start to understand this, destruction loses a bit of its horror. You stop seeing it as pure chaos and start seeing it as part of a cycle: creation, maintenance, decay, and rebirth. The mind clings to one phase. The soul moves through all four. So what do you do with this? First, you stop pretending you are above the darkness. You admit that part of you does want to see things burn, not because you are evil, but because you are tired of living inside lies. You stop judging that impulse and start listening to it. What exactly is it trying to destroy? A relationship that is killing your spirit? A version of yourself that only exists to impress other people? A life so small you can barely breathe in it?
Second, you choose how to work with that energy. You don't have to destroy yourself to destroy what is false. You don't have to burn the whole house to open a window. The craving for destruction can become the courage to change intentionally, instead of waiting for life to tear everything away from you. Destruction becomes conscious when you stop asking, "How do I avoid losing anything?" and start asking, "What am I willing to let die so that something more honest can live?" And finally, you remember this: you are not alone in this darkness. Everyone you meet is carrying their own quiet urge to burn down the parts of their life that don't feel true. Most people just don't have the language for it. They call it anxiety, boredom, restlessness, or emptiness. But underneath, their soul is saying the same thing as yours: this cannot continue the way it is. If this resonates with you, if you feel that strange recognition in your chest, it means you are already standing near the fire. You can keep running from it, or you can decide to walk through it consciously. In the end, the question, why does the human soul crave destruction, leads to another, more dangerous one. What in your life needs to end so that you can finally begin? Only you can answer that. Only you can decide whether you will keep patching the cracks in a life that no longer fits, or whether you will let the old structure fall and trust that something truer will rise from the ruins. Because that is the quiet truth hiding inside this darkness. Your soul is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to rescue you from a life that is too small for who you really are. The destruction you fear is often the exact door you need to walk through. On the other side of that door, there is a different way of existing in the world. Less decorated, maybe, but more real. Less comfortable, but more honest. You may lose a version of yourself that everyone admired, only to find a version of yourself you can finally respect. So the next time you feel that urge to walk away, to change everything, or to pull the plug on the life that looks fine but feels hollow, pause and listen to it carefully. Ask it what it wants to end and what it is secretly trying to protect inside you. Often, behind the craving for destruction, there is a very simple longing to stop lying, to stop performing, to stop carrying a weight that was never yours, to finally live a life that hurts less because it is no longer fake, truly alive. And if you feel that this descent into the dark is something you need to understand yourself, to face your shadow, to stop pretending, then stay close. Subscribe to Within the Abyss, leave a like if this spoke to you, and share this video with someone who is silently standing in the ruins of their own life. Down here, we don't run from the darkness, we learn to see in it. We learn to walk through destruction and come out on the other side more honest, more awake, and more alive than before.